do introductions. We have quite a few people. I guess I'll just, on my list, it's alphabetical. So I'll start out with Allison. Introduction, please.
So my name is Allison Hinder, and I'm the Office Specialist 2 for the Community Development Department.
Bill.
Bill Bartline, now just an interested citizen.
All right, Cammie.
Hey, I'm Cammie Oftemauer, and I'm the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity in Tillamook County.
Gail.
I'm Gail Uzel. I'm South County Rep on the Housing Commission, and I'm also on the Tillamook County Planning Commission.
See, Jeff.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Wong. I own CS Fishery, and we're having a labor problem based on affordable housing, so that's why I'm present and hoping to work on some North County projects.
Thank you very much for coming. Michelle.
Michelle Yank, Community Wellbeing Director at Adventist Health Tillamook and Coordinator for Tillamook County Wellness. So we're a large employer hat and health, housing as a social determinant of health hat.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Hurleman, and I work for Visit Tillamook Coast. I'm the Community Industry and Tourism Programs Manager.
Carrie.
Hi, Karen Fleischer. I'm a member at large.
Chris.
I'm Chris Lockenmeyer. I'm a major employer member of the commission as well.
Kristen.
I'm Kristen Koptiuk. I am a member at large based in Rockaway.
Ms.
I'm Miss Carlson Swanson, and I'm one of two nonprofit representatives.
Peter Starkey.
Peter Starkey from CARE. Just here to say hi.
Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Absher. I'm the Director of the Tillamook County Department of Community Development.
Shannon.
Good morning, everyone. Shannon Wakeman, the Administrative Assistant at Tillamook County Transportation District.
Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Cooper. I'm the Director of the ADC of Tillamook County.
Thank you, Terry, for joining us again. Appreciate it. Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Borman. I serve as a liaison between the Housing Commission and NOAA, Northwest Oregon Housing Authority.
And Todd?
Oh, yes. Hi, Todd Johnston. I'm also an interested citizen, but private developer that is also working on housing projects in Tillamook County. Thank you for having me today.
Great. We're going to hear more from Tim a little bit later in the agenda. Trevor.
Good morning. Trevor Belts. I'm the Manager of Government Relations and Public Affairs for the Creamery, and had the pleasure of serving on the subcommittee on legislation this past session for the Housing Commission.
Thank you. Valerie.
Valerie Schumann. I'm a real estate principal broker and a member at large.
Okay, we have some people on chat, quite a few. Maybe I won't run through all of those. They'll join us off and on. Commissioner Scar is, are you going to join us, Commissioner, on chat?
She's not. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Miss. So, Ed, Commissioner Scar is out of the office, and John Main also contacted me this morning to let me know he was unable to attend today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, let's get started. We always start our meetings off, for those who haven't attended before, with a mission minute. And so that's where we kind of talk about good things that are happening in the community. So would somebody like to start off?
This is Shannon with the Transportation District, and welcome to July, everyone. We just launched our new fare policy for Dial-A-Ride, which will make it easier for folks living around the county to travel around the county, which is great because a lot of our housing projects that we're hearing about and looking at aren't happening, right in downtown Tillamook. So it's another good option for people to get from where they can find housing to where they can find employment.
Valerie, you must have something.
You're right, I must, I'm thinking.
I can jump in and just let everybody know, if they haven't heard, Adventist Health has had a couple of big grants, and one of them we've had for a while, and now that COVID's abating, we're going to be able to do a deeper dive in it. But we've been building up medication-assisted therapy and other responses and preventive measures for addressing the opioid use epidemic in Tillamook County. And so there's a lot of work being done. People might not always see it or hear about it, but there's a tremendous amount of work being done by a collective group of people known as our Tillamook Opioid Use Response.
Wonderful.
There is the land, that acre of land in Wheeler is closing next week, and the health district is buying it and putting housing upstairs. And I believe they're moving their pharmacy to the lower level build.
Okay, well.
Terry has.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to tell everybody that we're organizing a job fair for Tillamook County on July 21st. More to come, but we have 6 or 8 employers already committed. So if anybody knows of any other employers that want to be involved in it, they can just send them to me and we'll sign them up. So we're working with the employment department, and it's going to be here at the PRI building where we are the afternoon of July 21st.
Nice.
Cami with Habitat, and we just closed on 2 of our Habitat home loans, which just means our families are officially homeowners on paper, and we'll be closing 2 more loans this month, which is a huge deal for us and our families. And then we're able to take that money from the loans and be able to put it right back into our next projects, which we are working through the permitting process right now for a new construction single family home in Hebo. So we're pretty excited about that.
And then I just want to share that at Oregon Food Bank, at the Tillamook County Food Bank location, we have added an assistant manager to our team, and we welcomed Sharon Gavin a couple of weeks ago, so that my role is evolving more into addressing the root causes of hunger and poverty. And so it'll add capacity to me so that I'm able to be more a part of things like the Housing Commission, things around childcare, other issues that are creating barriers to access to food. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, I'm going to turn the floor over to Tim Borman to talk about activities of Northwest Housing Authority. Tim.
Hello again. Ed, Sarah, I sent you my slides. Were you able to upload those for the group?
One moment, Tim.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've committed to share our information back and forth with the Housing Authority, just to make sure we don't miss any opportunities to collaborate on projects. So, Tim's our man.
Almost ready.
Well, I can begin talking as the
Please,
slides
Tim.
come up.
Thank you.
NOAA stands for Northwest Oregon Housing Authority. Some people say it should be NOWA, adding the W and such, but Northwest Oregon Housing Authority is an organization basically dedicated to helping folks with low income finding housing. And I'll just move through with my slides here. In terms of our program through Tillamook, Columbia, and Clatsop County. There's the slides, thank you. Slide 2, please. Thank you. If you can see the numbers of the breadth of our program that we serve up to essentially 2,000 customers receiving housing assistance in our 3-county area. This involves $7.5 million paid to landlords, and this includes 400 plus apartment units in 16 different apartment communities. If you could move to the next slide, please. I'll try to run through these slides sort of quickly because I think I have about 10 minutes to go through the slides. And these slides are available from NOAA to the group if you guys want to download these yourself. So that way you can look at some of the statistics and also kind of refresh yourself with the purpose and the mission with NOAA.
Tim, I'm sorry, I'm trying, it's not running. Hang on just a sec.
Surely.
Let me try this. Let me try one more time. This has been happening a little too often, so I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna do my other screen, and then that way we're gonna have the slides on the side, but at least everybody can see the big slide. How about that? Does that work? So you should be able to see overview of federal housing programs, is that correct?
Yeah, that would be the next slide.
Yep, okay.
Can you guys see those okay? Excellent. I've got it on my other computer, so I will work from my other computer that I pulled up my slides with. In terms of overview of federal housing programs, there's a rental program and there's a home ownership program. There we go. And it involves different organizations: HUD, Housing and Urban Development, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the IRS, and also the Veterans Program. There's also federal housing programs for the military as well, which is different from the standard low-income housing assistance. In terms of the different housing programs, and I'll get into this in a little more detail, vouchers are a big part of our program, but is also used extensively through housing and urban development throughout the country. Some housing authorities will also provide and manage public housing. And then there's also a special program, multifamily Section 8 housing for rental assistance as well. USDA, Department of Agriculture, also has programs for multifamily housing rentals. With the IRS, this is important in terms of investment and attracting investors, is low-income housing tax credits. This also can apply to help folks qualify for housing programs through different organizations such as NOAA. And with the VA, there's also a special type of vouchers as well. In terms of home ownership, HUD can support some single-family ownership programs such as well as the USDA, and with IRS, mortgage interest deductions can be available to assist low-income families with for home ownership. And the VA, as some of you are already familiar, there's a home loan guarantee program, and there's also disability housing grants as well. Next slide, please.
This is Tammy. Can I ask a question about that last slide real quick?
Sure.
So on the home ownership side, it's my understanding that when somebody has a NOAA voucher, they can actually turn that in to work towards home ownership. Is that still a program that exists?
Yes, and the details of which I can't say I'm particularly versed with, but that's a great question. And if you send me an email, Kimmy, I can, with a specific question, I can research that for you and get back to you. I'm actually a newbie in terms of understanding HUD as well as NOAA. So, and I'm not going to try to answer questions that I really don't have the knowledge base for. There's a lot of subtleties in the different programs, and as we as the presentation continues, you'll see the breadth of our program, and each of these programs different nuances that apply, and some of them I don't particularly understand completely. So I didn't question, but I did give you a resource to reach out to me, and I can research that for you or get you in touch with somebody who can answer in much more detail. Next slide, please. I'm trying to run through these slides pretty quickly as well, since we do have limited time, and I want to make space for other items in the agenda. Can we advance the slide, or is that not working? I'm going to just go ahead with my notes and read off the slides.
Oh, Tim, is it, they're showing, are they not showing to you guys?
Okay, do you guys have them? No?
You should be able to see public housing with a skyscraper, with a large building.
Federally assisted housing programs. Back one slide here. I think we backed up for Pammy's question. Back one slide. The different types of federally assisted housing programs are the public housing, as I mentioned, housing choice vouchers, as well as the tax credits. And move on to the next slide. We'll discuss the public and the housing. And that's owned and operated by the Public Housing Authority. Families pay an income-based or flat rent, whichever is lower, serves the lowest income populations. And however, this assistance is not portable. This becomes important when we talk more about vouchers, as some vouchers can be portable. Say, for instance, a family moves from one home to another. Some of those vouchers can be taken with them to other opportunities. But some housing vouchers are not portable, and public housing is one of those programs which is not portable. This slide is mainly just for completeness sake regarding federal programs and such. NOAA does not own or operate any public housing whatsoever. So this program doesn't apply for NOAA and Clatsop, Columbia, and Tillamook County. Next slide. The Housing Choice Vouchers are one of our biggest programs, operated by, and it's used throughout the country. It's operated by different individual public housing authorities, such as NOAA. The units are owned by a private owner, and families pay income-based rent. So in other words, their rent is based on their income. Subsidies paid directly to the owners of the public housing authority by the public housing authority, and the units can be either single-family homes or duplexes, apartment buildings, etc. And in housing choice vouchers, they are portable. In other words, the family is going to be moving from one county to the other, or a different housing program, housing option within the county. They can take that voucher with them. So when they qualify for the housing vouchers, they can carry that with them to their next housing option. The other program we have is the low-income housing tax credits. This may or may not include a housing authority. The tax credit eligibility is based on the annual income at the time of the certification of the families applying for the tax credit. The rents are usually below market value, but are not specifically income-based. The vouchers can be used to help a family afford the tax credit rent. And in this program, the assistance is not portable. In other words, they qualify specifically for this specific housing option. NOAA is an owner and sponsor of these tax credit properties. Of the programs that NOAA is involved with, of the federal programs that NOAA is involved with, these include the housing choice vouchers, the HUD multifamily Section 8 programs, low-income housing tax credit. The USDA has a program as well as NOAA does operate some market-based rentals as well. The next slide describes the different NOAA properties, and we broke these down into the different counties to get a better idea of what programs are available in the specific counties. You can tell that of the programs on the left column there are the different types of the programs we have. And then you can see the over all the way to the right on the column on the right hand side of the slide, that lists the properties that NOAA manages in Tillamook County. We have Champion Park, which is our biggest one, which is has 130 units. County Court has 12, Pine Court 4, Jerry Woodward 10, and Holden Creek, newly online, is up to 60. In terms of the bottom row there, I thought it'd be important to kind of get an idea of the distribution of the different housing units that are available to the different counties through NOAA. And especially with Holden Creek coming on board, you can see that Tillamook County is represented fairly well and fairly equitably among the three counties. Other than with Columbia County, they're coming on board with their new program, their new facility there at Broadleaf Arbor Gathering Place. We're really excited about that, of 239 units, which is pretty exciting. In terms of the Tillamook County Housing Choice Voucher Program, I think one of the more important parts of this slide is the right-hand circle, if you will, the donut. And oftentimes folks are concerned, what are the sizes of the facilities or the apartments or housing for the different folks that qualify for the Housing Voucher Program? And you can tell that 67% of the options in Tillamook County are one-bedroom units. Then another 21% is two-bedroom units, and then fewer and fewer. There's only 10% of the Tillamook County Housing Choice Vouchers for three-bedroom units, and only 2% are four-bedroom. You can kind of get an idea on the left side of the slide of the monies that are paid by NOAA, and the total monthly income of all the households all put together. And I thought this was quite striking. That means all the folks that are getting housing choice vouchers in Tillamook County, their total monthly income is only $169,000. The average monthly household income is $1,200, and the average annual income is limited to $14,000. So you can tell that NOAA really represents low-income housing options for individuals, especially in Tillamook County, but also Clatsop and Columbia counties as well. These are the combined numbers here. Kind of get a better idea. If you compare this slide with the last slide, you can kind of get an idea of the total program for the three counties versus Tillamook County only. Waiting list is a problem. We have a lot of folks on the waiting list, and we do qualify a number of people for housing choice vouchers, but we have a limited number of vouchers available. And so one of our jobs is basically to qualify folks, and then put them on the list. It's a time-based list, and when a facility, an option becomes available for housing, then we go to the top of the list and work down the list for the availability that is developed. One of the things that's necessary, and we spend a lot of time administratively going through the list and updating the information. Oftentimes, folks will get on a waiting list, but then for whatever reason, housing that might be available for them is not applicable. Say they move out of the area, they have a change of income. Sadly, sometimes some folks are deceased. It takes some time to get on the waiting list, and then to eventually have an opportunity to be able to use your housing choice voucher. In other words, there are vouchers available, but not necessarily is there a place to use all these vouchers. As with Tillamook County and the Housing Commission, we're constantly looking for new opportunities to be able to house our applicable our applicants that qualify for housing choice vouchers. there's a better idea of the breakdown on the waiting list for all 3 counties. One of our other challenges, if you will, is financing, as it is with all housing assistance and such. Since this is not a commercial organization, our income is not big, and as a result, we end up with margins that are much less than the commercial type investments and housing programs and such. And as a result, we seem to be a little bit behind compared to a normal, say, housing department program. And you can kind of get a look at the amount of money that we need to update the housing. I think a lot, especially with the news out of South Florida and such, there's a lot of thoughts about, well, how much does it cost to maintain properties? And that's things that are oftentimes not kept in mind as we tour our county and other counties. We see a lot of houses and such, and notice what the disrepair is. Oftentimes, folks can buy a house, but can they afford to upgrade the house as they need to, replace the roof, replace the water heater, come up to code with things like fire alarms, et cetera, et cetera. And that applies to all housing, but especially with a low-income housing assistance program such as NOAA, we have those roles as well. And so a lot of our funding that we get actually has to be plugged into the upgrade and upkeep of the different properties. Especially some of the properties are getting older as well. I know that Champion Park in Tillamook needs a lot of love, so to speak, and funding for that is something that's near and dear to our hearts. One of the new programs or researches that we did with NOAA just recently was we did a capital needs assessment for all our properties. So that way we have a real detailed readout in terms of how much investment is going to be needed over time and in the near future to bring these properties up to appropriate maintenance and such. And this slide you've already gone, you can see the listing of the dates of when the properties were built, replacement value, and the 1-year and capital and 5-year capital needs assessments. And you can kind of get to see the big summary of how much money we need for upgrade of our properties and such. We will be addressing these needs in the near future, as well as putting together a plan for an intermediate prioritization of the upgrade of our properties. And thank you for your attention. Like I said, please keep these slides for yourself. If you have specific questions for me, please email me. If I don't have an answer, I will research it for you and get back to you on that. And I want to thank Ed and Sarah for the opportunity to present this thumbnail sketch of Northwest Oregon Housing Authority.
Thank you, Tim. You know what would be really good, Sarah, if we could get PDFs maybe of the slides, because I'd like to print them off and keep them, because it's excellent information to get a sense of where we're at.
Yes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to email Allison right now while we're continuing our meeting and ask her to post those on the Housing Commission page. Okay, great.
All right. There you go. See if I see Gail. Oh, there's Gail. Okay. You want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the Development Code Committee? We've had a meeting fairly recently.
Yes, we did. We met on the 14th, and I'll try to cover it all, and other committee members feel free to jump in if I miss something. Let's see, where shall I start here? I guess I'll say that one of the things we talked about at our meeting that makes me excited about this meeting today is that we're interested in having local builders come and talk to us about the obstacles to building in Tillamook County and what things the Development Code Subcommittee might be able to do to help that. And so I'm excited that we're having a presentation that might answer some of those questions today. Sorry, I'm checking my notes here. One of the things that we've been talking about is talking to banks and lenders about what they think about our system development loan idea, so that we can ask them some specific questions about how those loans might affect their loan, how our loans might affect their loans, basically. So we're starting to reach out to banks. We've already had some real interest from Umpqua Bank, and it's nice to know that they're very interested in working with us on these issues. The other prong of bank interest besides the loans that we've discussed at our meeting, and I don't believe has been discussed in Housing Commission meeting, is that many banks have a community responsibility prong in their workings. And so reaching out to banks from the Housing Commission, from some branches of the Housing Commission, regarding their community responsibility prong, looks like it could be a really productive thing, a really productive meeting and connection for us. So that's one of the things we'll be taking into mind, and that includes both the Development Code Committee regarding the questions about the loan program, and also the Outreach Committee. So both of those committees are involved in getting together and working with the banks. We discussed the idea of the Housing Commission considering giving preference to smaller and local developers and builders on the scoring sheet that we have for the grant program, and want to raise that with the Housing Commission. I don't know that that's something we want to talk about today. We certainly can, but just what do you all think about in the idea of building a sustainable community if our scoring system gave some kind of preference to small or local developers?
You know, I might comment on that. The group that initially worked on the scoring is going to reconnect, and that idea could be thrown into the mix of any final changes to the work they've already done.
I'm sorry, Ed, I missed most of what you said.
Sorry, I'll speak a little slower. We're going to reconnect with the group that originally did the scoring process. Great. And finalize it. And we'll throw this idea into the mix because I think it's an important one to discuss.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So that'll
just scale from my perspective, as a small local nonprofit building, we build. I would appreciate that because I think it's easy to overlook the little guys, but look at the track record of how long, for example, Habitat's been building in Tillamook since 1996. So I think looking at that longevity of, how long have people been in the community building, showing that they're getting work done, I think should definitely have some weight.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Ed. Another thing that we talked about, and I'll go into this in a little more detail, is that the idea came up that the Housing Commission might be able to be a point source for some sort of temporary workers housing referral service. The idea being that we've discussed a couple of issues in Housing Commission. One of them is that we have many people who are maybe aging out of their larger homes, or they're still in their larger homes, but they're empty nesters. They have available rooms. The other side of that is we have a lot of seasonal workers here. especially in the summer times. And it might be that there's some way that we can make a connection between the two of those. Valiant Ed Gallagher went ahead and wrote us up a draft idea. Ed, do you want to talk about that a little bit since it's your idea?
Well, from the housing study, it really indicated that there was quite a bit of empty capacity in homes, people that might be willing to rent out a part of their home. And there's obviously a lot of need for temporary housing in the summer months. So there's a group in Oregon that already is doing that, and they do background checks and publicity and the rest. It's called, let's see it right, homeshareoregon.org. You could look it up and see what they're doing. One of the issues is how does that mesh with our zoning code in terms of all the issues involved in boarding people in your home. So I'm going to do a little research on that with Sarah and see if that works with Tillamook County Code and the city's codes. And if it seems like there's a possibility, then maybe reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in working on a project in Tillamook County. So that's kind of where that stands. And I think if it would work, it would be great if people were able to rent out a bedroom of their home for somebody working in one of the restaurants during the summer.
So Ed, you're saying that we would be the connector to find somebody to manage that, not that the Housing Commission would manage that?
Yes, I think we'd support a nonprofit like this, Home Share Oregon, to do it, and we just support them and maybe do some advertising on it, but not take any direct responsibility.
Great.
Any other questions on that issue? All right. Another issue that we've talked about that has come up in several subcommittee meetings is a discussion of fees, specific fees for second homes. And that's different than the short-term rental fee. This is a specific fee that some municipalities, Vancouver, British Columbia, has a fee for absentee owners because they feel like that makes an impact on their availability of housing for local people. We also noted that Vancouver, British Columbia has apparently a thriving sort of underground business in people who come around and make your vacant second home look like it's occupied by putting newspapers on the door and opening and closing blinds and things like that. So I don't know how successful it is, and I don't know if we want to have a discussion about that, but it is an issue that's been raised in subcommittee, and it is a way to mitigate or not the costs of empty houses. So I just wanted to raise that officially on the agenda with the Housing Commission.
I think we ought to appoint Bill to be our point person on that. Sounds like an easy project.
It does sound like a good one.
Okay.
So if there's no discussion on any of those, let's see. Another idea that came up in the subcommittee meeting is the possibility of a GoFundMe site or something similar to develop funding for workforce housing loans. I don't know how we would do that, but certainly some GoFundMe sites make a bundle of money for worthy causes. And perhaps if we can find a way to embody our cause in a specific measurable thing that people wanted to donate to, that might be a way to obtain some funding going forward into the future. Again, that's something I wanted to raise with the Housing Commission because we've talked about it and it seems like it might be a great idea. Any feedback on that?
I would just point out there's a model out there, a company called Steward that has worked to raise money for the Food Hub in Astoria. And they take in individual, they aren't donations, they're a part ownership of the final product, and then you get paid off. It's like creating a loan, and you get interest earnings back. And something like that could generate funds where people are essentially loaning the money to create it, and they get paid back over time at lower interest rates. But then it's part of a good deed to do. And I think a lot of people would be interested in donating, and then we would create a fund that we could then use like with other resources we'd have to generate for housing projects.
It seems like this is one that we clearly would need somebody to administer, but I would encourage everyone to plow it into your work that you're doing for housing and see if we can figure out a way to make that happen as we go along.
It would be more complicated than the GoFundMe, because that's essentially people donating money.
Yes. Perhaps we can look into how Steward does it, how they came about, and who keeps track of their administration and everything. So Ed and I will look into that. We talked about housing rehabilitation. A lot of righteous housing rehabilitation is going on in Tillamook County already. The outreach subcommittee has already interviewed a fellow named Terry Phillips, and the Tillamook County Pioneer interviewed a fellow named Dan Carroll, both of whom are private citizens who are just taking it upon themselves to buy and rehabilitate houses in the county. One of the things that we talked about in the Development Code Subcommittee is that perhaps we can get together a list of the agencies that might be of use to the people doing these housing rehabs to make their way easier, because they're doing our work for us. So if there are agencies that you know of that a private person looking to rehabilitate houses and rent them out to local people might not know of, if you can give us the names of those agencies or ideas for those agencies, we're going to start to get together that list. Does that make sense to everyone? I see a couple of nods. Let's see. The issue was raised, and I'll raise it here, that at some point it would be great to hire a professional videographer to document some of the things that are happening around it. That's a lot of money that we don't have right now. And the outreach committee is already looking at, I'll get into that in the next report, but the outreach committee is already looking at spending some of the little money that we have. But that is on our agenda, to look at doing some real professional video. For instance, to go around and do a tour of Holden Creek. Again, these are ways to get people to look at housing, missing middle housing, as well as low-income housing, without having their knee-jerk, I don't want that here reaction, because as we know, some of the developments that are happening are really beautiful, and we should be proud of them, not trying to turn away from them. And I think that's all I've got for development code, unless Ed or anybody else has anything else.
Terry's got a question.
Yes.
I was just going to say that I did a little bit of research on what you were talking about earlier in terms of a community investment fund. And I talked to Mercy Corps in Portland, and they did a similar thing with some commercial property. And they said that there's some rules around doing it for residential property that don't apply to commercial property. So I have all those contacts if you'd like me to send them, because one of my ideas was too that we would start a fund and have Tillamook people invest in building, housing for Tillamook, and that would be a great thing And it would also help people build wealth because if they bought shares into this community investment fund, it was a way to increase their personal wealth. So that's kind of why I started investigating it, but I haven't gotten very far. But I do have a list of a few contact names.
That would be great, Terry. If you could get those to us, we would be grateful.
Sure.
Okay. Do you have my contact information or Ed's contact information?
I have Ed's contact information. I'll send it to him.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
I think it's really representative of how the Economic Development and the Housing Commission are really joined together because
Yes.
those two issues are so interrelated in this community. Okay, Gail, anything else?
Not for me. Is there somebody else that has a hand up or a comment?
Cami, your hand is up. Okay, this technology is wonderful. Let's see, Carrie, you were going to give a legislative update?
Yeah, we had our final legislative meeting here in June. I sent Sarah and Allison late last night the final bill summary, so hopefully she'll be able to distribute that to you all. There were 36 new laws that we tracked that made it past. There was originally 112 that we tracked through the last 6 months. And so we kind of those new laws, a lot of them had to do with equity, homelessness. That was a big key. There were one to note, House Bill 2605, which was chief sponsored by Rep. Gomberg, Smith, and Weber, had to do with tsunami risk. And new structures have to be evaluated for seismic geological hazards for major structures. So it looks like there's going to be some interest there, at least addressing that in our local communities, at least our local coastal communities. As far as housing, the big one was the 391, a Senate bill. And that was our big ADU law. And I'm not going to kind of go through them all, but as far as timing on what to do, where to go from here, I'm actually going to probably ask Trevor to step in here if he's available, because he did a little bit more research on exactly the timing coming forward, because we've got a break here, and there's going to be some legislative opportunities if we want to take something to our legislatures to change state law. And I think concepts need to be in mid-November. So we have some time, but we also want to hear from other subcommittees as well as the Housing Commission on where their interest is. On the third tab is a summary of the count, so you can kind of see where the bills, where they went, where they ended up dying in committee, and you can also sort them, figure out kind of a win-loss record if you wanted to find out whether the chief sponsor is, or you can sort down by just bill. And then every on this list, everything can be on the new law, or all laws reviewed, the first tab. It is all all set up so you can sort and filter it by using the drop-down arrows on the titles. So try to make it a workable document for everybody to use.
Great.
Thanks, Carrie. I would just add, sorry, this is Trevor Belts here. another bill to highlight that I think the legislature is really seeing as their big solution to housing this session is Senate Bill 8, which was pushed by the Senate President. And that will restrict local jurisdictions' ability to deny affordable housing developments on land not zoned for residential use, specifically for on commercial use within urban growth boundaries, and allows for increased density in certain situations. I've not done a thorough read of this bill and would be happy to kind of figure out how this applies to Tillamook County specifically. Sarah and I can probably touch base at a later time, but as far as, steps to take next, Carrie and I had talked during our legislative committee is that, the opportunity is there to maybe not lobby, but, to kind of seek with this interim coming up now before the next legislative session is, if there are solutions that Tillamook County specifically has in the housing space, and that, with Representative Weber being brand new, I think that she would be knowing the county so well, would be open to, hearing the thoughts of the county and this commission of if there are solutions that might be needed through the legislative process. And so the time is of the essence to kind of get those ideas in, because they have to have those concepts submitted. And during the sort of short session, legislators only have so many bills that they can propose during that session. And so they need to have ideas into legislative council by, I believe, I don't have the dates right in front of me now, but mid-November to be able to kind of get drafts back before the session really gets underway, and pre-planning starts in mid-January. So happy to answer any questions.
Would funding of programs be part of the things that they would be willing to look at, or would it be more other types of changes?
Well, you're getting at the core of the legislature in general. So, I mean, as you may or may not be aware, the short legislative session is something relatively new that was started in 2012. And it was pitched to the voters as really for small fixes to the budget to be able to make those adjustments. And it's really transformed into legislators wanting to, get another bite at the apple to have take-home bills, especially as they're running for re-election. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think this next budget cycle will still they're setting aside a good amount of ARPA funds that may be available for one-time use. And I think, as we all know, Senator Johnson well, that meeting and conversing with her about what those opportunities look like might be helpful. But I do think that there will be funding opportunities, but I'm unsure and don't work a ton in the budget space these days as to what that might look like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to comment on that, on funding, there were quite a few bills that made it through both the House, and then they ended up dying in Ways and Means as soon as the budget was declared. So there were, about 7 of them that died at that point, because there either were new programs or there just wasn't enough money for those programs to add. So they still... there were great ideas, but so if there's something on those that we could be revived in future sessions as well.
Okay, thank you, Carrie and Trevor. I appreciate the feedback, and we'll study that list carefully and see if there's something we want to get together. We should put that on the agenda for our next month's meeting for sure, to revisit and see what we want to do and have everybody think about it. Okay, Gail, do you want to do any more on updates on the outreach efforts?
Oh yeah, we've been busy. We've actually met 4 times since the last meeting, because we felt like we had so many details that we just didn't want to go along with. So I'll try to keep them brief here. We're working still on our What's the Story with Housing, which is the main theme of our outreach. A series of articles called What's the Story with Housing in Tillamook County will be forthcoming when we get all the ducks in a row. One of the things that has been holding us up is that the first article, all the articles, but the first article in particular, we want to start off with it being interactive, with a call to action, with people to respond with their ideas. And so we need a way for them to respond. So we have been working with county IT to figure out a way between working with Jeff Underwood, who's county IT, and with Allison, who's going to be our point person, to get something that we feel is workable and appealing. So what we're looking at doing right now, just for your information, is something much like what Tillamook County Wellness has, which if you look at if you go on their website, it is, while it is technically a subset of the Tillamook County page, a subset of the Department of Community Development, it is its own web page and it has a significantly different format. We think a significantly more friendly and appealing format than a government web page. It also gives you a little bit of separation from government. So if people are interested in housing but don't want to talk to the county, it's a way to get information. So we're working on that. It turns out that Kristen, our newest member, has enough background to have built us a mock-up web page that we're working on, so that we can make sure that we include all the elements that we want on the web page, so that it serves as not just a place for people to leave comments through a form submission on the website, but also a place for people to access all kinds of information about housing, including what there might be for rent, including how to connect with appropriate development forms, the whole thing that you might expect from housing. Let me see, I'm sorry, I just lost my brain cell here. We have met with a graphic designer that we're very excited about working with. So she's gonna work up some designs for us so that we have a consistent message in terms of a logo, colors, design, the whole thing. We want this to be a really professional presentation. We're frustrated. I'll speak for Barbara, who's especially frustrated. She's gone off camping, so she's not with us today. But we really wish that we could get this out next week. We have articles, I've told you this before, we have great, exciting, wonderful interviews all packaged and ready to go, but everything needs to be in order, and we feel very strongly that once we start this campaign, it needs to be consistent, it needs to get titrated so it has different themes, so we're not just dumping everything onto the webpage at once, but rather leading people along with information that's enticing to them. So we're working on it, I guess is what what I want to tell you. We're working on it in a very multi-pronged fashion. We are also getting ready to talk with developers and are excited that one is that we were having somebody at the meeting today. And I think that's all I have for today, unless somebody else from the subcommittee has something that they want to raise. All right.
Okay, thank you. Well, Todd Johnston is here to talk about a project he's working on. And I'll just turn it over to you, Todd, and you could share what you want.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to the meeting. I'm excited for the progress that the group has been making, and the work you guys are doing is great. So my involvement here, I started out looking in Tillamook County and talking to different people, business people, which is how I met Jeff Wong, who I think is on the call as well, but started talking to different people about the need for housing, for workforce housing in Tillamook County, which is pretty significant. And also the need for housing stock, which a lot of it is older, especially with single family homes. So we began exploring the idea of looking into the rural development single family home model, which was mentioned earlier. I had done a project 3 years ago in Cloverdale, using that funding method, which turned out very successful, and built a home for a single dad with 2 kids. And we think this is a model that can be expanded in Tillamook County for home ownership. And I think someone had asked earlier about the housing choice vouchers, and those can also be used for home ownership. But we prefer the RD model because it's a direct loan from rural development, and it's completely guaranteed. We just have to find someone who's qualified, income qualified, which we don't think would be a problem. So looking at also infill development within the county and the new House Bill 2001 and the Senate bills that recently were passed allowing for duplexes on single family lots, and cottage clusters could now be allowed. And I don't know where the city is at, or Tillamook County is at, looking at revising their codes. There was some discussion of it earlier, but I don't know if anything of that new language will be included. But I think those are good tools, as was discussed earlier, to help development in the county. So Jeff and I together have looking for spots for development, and we located a spot in Wheeler, which we think would be a perfect site for a cottage cluster or some duplexes there that could serve workforce housing. And it would be a commercial, mixed commercial and residential. I guess part of the lot would be commercial, for commercial use, industrial. The second part of the lot would be set aside for residential, possibly for housing for that project, but also it could serve housing for neighboring communities as well. So we've been working with the city of Wheeler, who right now is in the process of revising their codes, and they have hired someone to go in and look at their code structure to see if they can make it more favorable for infill development in their community. And I think that the need they have in Wheeler is probably similar to the need a lot of communities in Tillamook County have. So I think that's a great discussion, and I think we're going to learn a lot from going through that process with them. But at this point, we've also been talking about doing a food innovation network in Tillamook County and how housing could be a part of that. And so that was sort of how I got looped into this discussion. But yeah, we're looking at doing there's a funding application in the fall in September from Oregon Housing and Community Services that's coming out that would allow to develop up to 40 units. So there's a possibility there as well to do a multifamily project, which could serve workforce housing on several different levels. And so we've been talking with the Creamery and like the Kawanda Hospitality Group, and I'd like to reach out to the hospital and other people, and like the lumber mill we've talked to as well, and they're interested. So I think if we can reach out to local businesses in the community that have a real need for workforce housing, we can get some support there, possibly some financial support, but at least some support for our grant application or funding application moving forward. So Jeff and I would like to continue those discussions, and if there's somebody, if this group has any contacts or has started those discussions already, that would be good to know. But we're going to continue moving forward and try to get this development in Wheeler completed. And we've been looking at other sites as well. There are a few sites in Tillamook that would work for development. There's one that's right next door to the hospital, but maybe in the tsunami zone. So, but there are several viable sites within Tillamook that would work, that would be similar possibly to the Holden Creek project that was just completed. So I guess I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any about moving forward, but we were just looking for support for this project in Wheeler, and I think if we can get one project completed, like with Holden Creek, and show people what it looks like, I think that would go a long way to getting more development done in Tillamook County.
Hey, Todd,
yes.
I have a question. Is your plan rental 100%, or are you interested at all in looking at some units being owned, home ownership?
Yeah, we're interested in both of those ideas. And I think another idea we had thought of was talking to people who own, or trying to work with people to implement ADUs on their property that are interested in doing that. to help with infill development in the county. So I think home ownership is important to helping the community stay viable. So I think, that's how we started out looking at development, was doing the home ownership option through rural development. And I guess I was curious with Habitat for Humanity, what is your funding source? How do you, do you use the RD funds as well, or?
We use Oregon Bond right now, or we use the USDA Direct for the loan for our families. But I'd love to talk with you because it could be really, especially if you're looking at a big application for funding, it could be great. Maybe we put a couple Habitat units in there where we can do some home ownership. We also do long-term permanent affordability. So there's a lot of good things that we do, and then having Habitat as a partner could look good on an application as well. And we'd love to be involved in just increasing and working with developers such as yourself. So if you want to put your email in the chat, I'd love to get a hold of you.
Great, yeah, that's great. I think I agree, that'd be great. So, yeah.
And Todd?
Yes.
In regards to support, I'm on the Neoconi School District, and we are currently having teachers that have been hired for this fall and can't find homes, any place to live. So, and I think we have even right now some people in motels. So if we can offer any sort of letter of support, please definitely reach out.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Another place that we've been looking at lots is in Rockaway Beach. So that could be, if you're talking about Neoconi District, that could be a good fit. But yes, that's great. Thank you. That would be very helpful. I've heard that from several businesses in the community that they can't keep staff. So.
Michelle, I see your hands up. I'll get you, Terry.
Terry can go. She was before me.
Oh, okay. Terry.
Hi, Todd. This is Terry Cooper. I just wanted to say, you said you touched base with the lumber mill, and I just wanted to say I think Terry was involved. We had a couple meetings with them prior to COVID that they had some specific land they wanted to use for workforce housing, and they were willing to give the land up and also maybe provide some lumber to build housing. So I don't know if that's the connection you're talking about or not, but that's something very, very worth following up on. Then COVID happened and everything stopped, so.
Yes, yeah. No, we talked to them about the donation of lumber because lumber is very expensive right now. Mm-hmm. And they said that even if they had the lumber, that a lot of their lumber is spoken for already. So that was sort of difficult at the time, but I'd love to revisit the conversation. But they did offer that they could provide a cash investment if we were to put their name on the project and involve them in the project, or even set aside some units for their workers, which is another option. If we build a multifamily project, if we have support or buy-in from local community businesses, like we could set aside units for their populations, and that way it could help alleviate the problem, like you mentioned, with the school district. So.
And two, any connection, if you want to, have meetings with the local businesses or set something up, I'd be willing to help you do that. So just let me know, because I'm always, involved in connecting with the businesses here in Tillamook County. So.
Thank you. I'm much appreciated.
I might mention that the mayor of Wheeler is now on our Economic Development Commission, and he's very vocal in terms of understanding the connections, and so I think he's a good resource too.
I agree. Yes, I think he has a development background, so he understands a lot of the codes. Is Tillamook County right now looking at changing codes or reviewing codes? I saw some of the discussion earlier, but it sounds like that's actively in progress.
Sarah, do you want to comment?
Sure, I can comment. Thank you, Ed. So good morning, Todd. Yes, that is true. And there's multiple efforts on various fronts hoping to tie it all together when that time comes to take a strategic approach that includes coordination with the Public Education and Outreach Subcommittee, as well as, of course, the Development Code Subcommittees, as you can imagine. some of that work can be a little contentious and a little challenging. So we want to make sure that when we start, we have the best strategy moving forward for a positive outcome.
Yeah, that's a good.
One thing I would just comment on, the county codes, of course, don't apply within the cities. And so we try to model what we think is going to work, but the cities then will have to follow up and see if they agree with some of the concepts that we're promoting. So that's kind of our role.
Right, sure.
Can I ask a question? This is Tom Jarrett. While we have Todd on the line, what does he think the biggest impediments to his experience processing permits, and where should we focus our improvements?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I had a few ideas on that. So I think the idea you had about giving preference to local developers or projects that have connection to local businesses, I think that's a great tool to help out with that. The other impediment, I think, can be the system development charges. So if some cities and counties have been willing to waive those SDCs if the project is affordable or if it meets a certain need within the community. So that's another obstacle that's another big obstacle that the county and cities could help us with in partnership, working with the system development charges. I guess the other obstacle has just been the rural location of Tillamook, trying to find construction and qualified people coming from Portland to do the work. But I think now the county's growing and there's enough momentum that I'm sure that we can find people now that would be willing to come and help with these projects because the need is there and the community support is there. So I think that's another big hurdle, like the community support. If we don't have that, it's hard to get things done. But this group here and like the city of Wheeler has been very cooperative, trying to help get through those obstacles. But I think that I would say the system development charges and the permitting probably would be the biggest obstacles that the counties and cities could help alleviate.
When you say permitting, say a little more.
Well, I guess if the permitting takes a long time, or if it's there's a lot of requirements that can be inserted during the permitting process, depending on the locality or jurisdiction, that don't necessarily need to be in the part of that process. So if we have a committee or a city county that's more, I guess, the timeline, for permitting really, if we were able to speed that up and get a preference for local projects or projects that were important, I think that would be helpful.
What are the requirements, permitting requirements, that from an outsider's standpoint seem asinine or you think unnecessary, you'd love to see go away and would avoid heartaches for developers?
I mean, it's different in each jurisdiction, but I think a lot of times there can be requirements to add extra parts of like a road or maybe the sewer line, things like that, that you normally wouldn't expect, but the city or county may have interest in doing that and they may want to pass that along to developers. So yeah, things like that, I would say. But it's hard to say specifically because every city and jurisdiction can be very different. So, but I think mainly the ability to want to work with the developer, want to do development. Some counties and cities don't really, they want to stay small. They don't want development, and so that can be an issue. But I feel like in Tillamook County, that there is the desire for growth and for community. So I feel that with this, like all the support we've been hearing today is hopeful in terms of the permitting process. So I feel like we could work with the county and the cities to get through that process easier.
Michelle, I want to give you a chance because you were on earlier.
I was just, and if I have Todd's email, I can really make quick work of it, but I definitely will connect you to our folks here at the hospital. When the Garibaldi apartments went up, we have, I don't know how many units, if it's more than one, but we pre-committed to that, and I know we would be in a position to do that with future developments. We are still in dire need of housing for employees and locums. We have a lot of medical providers that come here for periods of time from other locations while we're trying to recruit for medical care. And so it's just a revolving door all the time. It's a need. We have people that come here from the East Coast, from, Texas, and they need temporary housing. So having those resources is really valuable to us. And then some of the people that we've interviewed, I serve on the education subcommittee, the community outreach subcommittee, and one of the folks that I want to make sure that we can get you connected to is Zwaltz Transportation. They I think, would be interested.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, who are you with? Was it Adventist Health? Or?
Yeah, Adventist Health Tillamook.
Okay, thank you.
I can drop my email in the chat for your reference too.
Thank you, okay.
All right, Terry, you had something additional. Yes. Terry, you're on mute.
I didn't have anything. I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay. Kristen.
It strikes me that, Todd, you just became our Exhibit A. Because you yourself have just conducted all of the steps that we have been talking in many of the committees about preparing a pathway for developers and others like you to ease that process. So everything you ticked off, we have already been talking about in the various committees. And it suggests to me that, number one, we should talk to you more. But number two, we're on the right track of trying to prepare the pathway for greater construction of housing for people like you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. But yes, I agree. I think that this group has done a lot of good work, and the county commissioners. So I think that the timing and for Tillamook County right now is perfect. So.
One thing we might want to do is send Todd and Jeff a copy, Sarah, of the memo that we have done that says what have we done to date with all the actions, creating a loan fund, the property tax exemption, just so you're aware of the list up to date.
Yeah, thank you.
Jack?
Definitely do that.
I feel real fortunate to have crossed paths and connected with Todd. He's a terrific asset. And one thing that I'd like to add is that if this group if there's any form of outreach, because the Wheeler project has great potential, but there's a very small group of anti-development people, and most of those people are non-native people that have come in recently and are generally retirees, and they don't see the impact of the need for affordable housing. Now, when it gets to a point when there's no one to pump their gas, they might get it. But what Michelle said, and to that kind of aging demographic, that really hits a lot of points there that they might get. And so, we can do all we want, but we're always going to be butting our heads against a certain demographic there that won't want us. So if there's some kind of outreach package that we can put together, some kind of communications or dialogue to really plead our need, I think that would go a long ways, because we've been spinning our wheels in Wheeler for about 3.5 years. And now with House Bill SB 8, that may help and really push things along where we won't need public sentiment to get a zone change. So anyway, that's what I want to add. We can do a lot of great things, but we just need to, if we can get 100% on board and not be fighting that 20%, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
And Todd, I can just say to that too, Habitat actually started in Wheeler. So we've successfully built 3 single-family homes in Wheeler. This was when we first started in the 1990s.
Okay.
But we would love to get re-engaged with our community, and I think when you bring in a brand where you know, that's helpful. It helps ease some pain there, so we'd love to be a part of that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with Jeff completely that hearing the voices from you directly, like the people in this group, would be very powerful rather than, you know, Jeff and I trying to sell it to them. Having to hear actually the voices from Adventist Health and from the school district and people like that are really in real need, and it's not just talk. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think outreach would help us here as well.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump in and say this is to kind of loop back to Gail's earlier comment about videography. I want people to understand what we're talking about. We're talking about a professionally done 2 to 3 minute video with a clip of Todd being interviewed about what he's trying to do and Jeff being interviewed about what they're trying to do, and Adventist coming in and saying, we need this and this is why we're here. And it's the game changer for the NIMBYism that we are going to, we are at a tipping point, and if we can just get enough positive, constructive, relatable information out there and have it be a regular cadence, I really think that because people are experiencing the pain points, they do know these people that are working, that can't find housing. They're hearing from people like Halco who doesn't have an accounting manager after 3 months because they never could find housing. So now they're desperate and reaching out to everyone to figure out what to do. So we're hearing enough of those stories, and now here it's perfect timing for this solution presentation to be laid out there, but have it be in this format that's really for the public, not for the government or for the, you know, it needs to have the same type of approach that you would take with any other marketing campaign to sell a product to a consumer.
I agree. I read your housing study, which is excellent. That was well done. But I think what you're talking about would be something to just, like you said, sell it. Like take it off of paper and make it real for people so that they can actually see what these numbers mean. So, but then you have the housing study to back it up. You have the facts, you've done your homework. So I think it's a win-win. I think it's a great idea.
I just saw a post that said we need to change it to YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard.
That's great.
You know, following up on what Michelle was saying, I'd love to see some video of some of these actual professional people having to live in their cars down here. That, I think, would really bring it home when they see who's being displaced and who can't find housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Well, I
To
would
be
like,
fair, Jeff, wasn't that project in Wheeler, it was lodging for a motel. I think, like you're speaking to, Jeff, if people are approached and understand, I think in Wheeler, the little bit I knew, just like you're asking for, Jeff and Todd, people didn't feel involved from the beginning, and that coordinated effort like we did with tourism, when people didn't want tourism here either, but we did symposiums and we presented in a way that people understood, and on that referendum, we had a landslide victory with tourism, that they would embrace it even though they weren't paying for it mostly. So yeah, I appreciate your comments.
Great.
Gail?
I would like to have the outreach committee meet specifically with both Todd and Jeff so that we can put together a really targeted program for the Wheeler thing. So if you would be willing to meet with us, and yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's anytime.
Gail, I believe that I already connected. There was an email a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
You all have each other's contact information.
We do. We do.
Hey, other comments for Todd and Jeff?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good
Thank you,
discussion.
everyone.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Yes.
Okay, is Commissioner Scar not available, right, for any update?
No.
The big one for us to follow, I think, with the commission is how they're going to use the federal funds that come in And we need to keep our eye on that one closely and advocate for a little bit of it coming off for housing programs if we can manage that.
I can say, Ed, in my conversations with Commissioner Scar, that is something that she is very closely tracking. She's having meetings with city leaders and officials to talk about how this money could be spent in the best possible way that includes achieving goals such as creating additional housing in our communities. So that is something she is actively engaged in and pursuing.
To be familiar with it, the others that maybe aren't, it's approximately what, $8 million? Was that $8 million coming into the county lump sum to be spent fairly quickly on things like infrastructure, where it'll make a good positive impact. And one of the ideas I suggested was to make a fund that would pay for systems development charge markdowns to help developers. And then the jurisdictions that get the systems development charge would be actually doing projects in the ground. So it would be a double benefit, I think, of a program like that.
So Ed, thank you for mentioning that. One thing I think that is worth noting in my conversation with others, because there are several entities countywide and special districts who are very interested in receiving part of these funds. It's my understanding that they are looking for shovel-ready projects, and one of the challenges that I think everybody is having is getting that package together with the bow on it to show that it's ready to go. So my recommendation would be to the Housing Commission that if this is something you want to pursue, it may be timely to start developing a concept for that program, because if that is something that could be possible, I think it has to be out of concept to be considered to be eligible.
The benefit of the systems development charge is that supposedly the water districts and cities and others that charge those are supposed to have a list of projects already that would be a go. So they already have their priorities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, other comments? Gosh, we're getting done a little bit early. That's nice. Sarah, do you have any more updates from the development?
Thank you. I do have a couple. Just to give an update, the design volunteer that will be working with the Public Education and Outreach Subcommittee, I was happy to get her volunteer paperwork in. So one thing I do need from the subcommittee is I need a list of duties. I will need to review that and make sure that I get that to HR to finish out with my paperwork. So if you guys want to do that and email that to me, I think that will probably be the last thing for us to get ready to bring Hannah on board. As far as Senate Bill 391, so this is something I'm currently in conversation with County Council with. I'd like to be able to do just a legislative text amendment to the rural residential 2-acre zone and not have to go through a Measure 56 notice. So we've talked briefly about Measure 56 before, but for those new folks with us today, Measure 56 is a state law that requires when a jurisdiction makes any changes to their zoning code, they have to notify every landowner that may be affected. So that alone, when we've done that before for things like tsunami resilience and other programs, that's upwards of 10,000 notices just for one change. But because this has come out of a Senate bill through the legislature, it may be possible, also because it's supplemental, that I may be able to have a workaround there and just take something straight to hearing. So talking about barriers and what takes time and what costs money, that's definitely one thing. If I can find a workaround to that Measure 56 notification requirement, it will save us a tremendous amount of time and money I do not have in my budget for something like this for this year. So fingers crossed, if I can find a way to do that, I'm certainly going to do that. The housing coordinator position is being reposted, and the planner 2 position has also been posted. So one of the other things that we are committed to doing in the department to help increase our service and decrease permit review timelines is hire more staff. The county commissioners this last budget season were very generous with community development and giving us probably the most positions of any department to refill and create to recruit. And it's not a lot, but it's going to help. And I appreciate their recognition of the need and how important staffing this department is to make sure we can help people like Todd and Jeff moving forward as quickly as possible. So it could be probably by this fall, if all goes well. I will have folks here in this office. Finding them housing is going to be a challenge. And I will tell you, even on my end, as a department head that's trying to recruit staff to the department to help serve everyone, part of what I am having to offer and promise is to help people find housing. And I don't know where it is either. So I've lost a couple of opportunities that way because people could not find a place to live. So if anybody has a spare room or a lawfully established ADU or something of that fashion, please let me know, because I hope to have some good people coming in that will hopefully help all of you and all of us as well. With that, I did do an internal promotion this week, so I am pleased to announce that one of our building inspectors, Inspector Don Beal, has been promoted to assistant building official. And so to help us try to keep permits going out the door as fast as we can, we are continuing to still work with Northwest Code professionals for a lot of our services and Clear Company, which we have to do. Thank you, Peter. Which we have to do because, like many jurisdictions, we are all scrambling for help. The city of Astoria building official, I believe, was in a car accident 2 weeks ago, and everybody statewide literally looked to see how we could go and help Astoria cover so that they could keep their commercial inspections and their big projects going as well. It was determined yesterday that the governor would extend an emergency declaration for building inspection services, because the other thing that we and other jurisdictions are doing right now is we are trying to do and keep inspections going in any possible way, because the volume of inspections and the needs versus the number of staffing that all of our jurisdictions have, and I'm not just talking about Tillamook County, I'm talking about Clatsop and Lincoln, Columbia, Multnomah, all the way across the board, nobody has enough staff. And so with the state of emergency that the governor imposed because of the pandemic, we were able to shift inspections. We were able to use things like doing inspections in real time, other types of inspections with photographic evidence, depending on the level and complexity of the inspection and the nature of the inspection. And because the entire state is in this massive development boom and continues to be, I received word this morning that the emergency declaration that provides local jurisdictions with flexibility for inspections will continue through the end of the year. And so that's huge for us, and that's huge for everything that we are all working on together for housing projects, for commercial development. And I'm very thankful that that declaration will remain in place for us. But, probably the biggest message that I have today is that we continue to see record numbers. And Tillamook County is one of many jurisdictions that's scrambling to do all we can to cover as many bases as possible to make sure that development continues, especially given our housing crisis and the economic development needs of our communities. So that's my update today.
Tom, you had a question?
I do. Comment. Sarah, you just asked all of us if we knew of any of our friends had any spare rooms. My neighbor happened to, for the longest time, I don't know if she still does, rented out a room in her place to a traveling nurse nurses. Is there a way that we can encourage some sort of publicity or advertisement without getting legally involved with regulations, which I see you shaking, Sarah, but how could we encourage some advertisements in a newspaper or something other than word of mouth? Hey, you got a room? You can make some money.
So, this meeting is being recorded and it is public, so I'm going to say this very, very carefully. So one thing that would be helpful for everyone to know is I make it a point not to read the newspapers. I don't read the classified ads. I don't read the rentals because I know there are people that are doing that, and it's twofold. It serves the need of the people who need a place to stay, and it can also offer a supplemental income to people who maybe desperately need it, right? And so, you know, if we find out about it and code enforcement action needs to be taken, then I am responsible and obligated to do that. And if you're a short-term rental, all bets are off. If you're renting, we got a lot of folks that are going to go and help you get back on track there. But as far as just renting, I think word of mouth, there's a lot of things on Facebook. Social media, I think, has been huge in helping people find. Yeah, okay. The other thing I would say, and probably Michelle would agree with this, is, you know, our HR departments, if you know of anybody who has a place to rent or a local rental company that has room, you know, houses available, I'm constantly connecting our HR department with those rental entities and folks, because then that way, even if I don't need it, I know somebody else may. And so, you know, it's a way we can certainly help each other. But yeah, Tom, I mean, you get into the fire and life safety issues, the whole, you know, the gamut. And that's why I just, you know, if I need to do something, I'm going to do something, but I have other things to focus on too.
So one thing I just would add, that HomeShare I mentioned, HomeShare Oregon, is a group that does just that, connects people that want to rent a room. There are planning issues involved, and I'm going to contact them and ask them how they've addressed this in other jurisdictions that have probably codes very similar to Tillamook County's code or the city's. So it's kind of a technical issue, but really need to figure out, is there any roadblocks for doing that? And if we could figure out code amendments or other things that are necessary to make it happen more smoothly, then we could identify those for a future package of code amendments. So I think it's an important one to tackle, because our housing study showed that there's a lot of people with empty rooms that would probably like to rent them. And then obviously there's a need on the other side.
Sarah, is there currently a section in the code that defines the requirements for someone to rent a room to someone else?
So yes, and it is a regulated use in unincorporated Tillamook County. So I can't speak for the cities, because as we talked about before, the cities have their own planning programs. But room and board lodging, so basically if you're being compensated, it is regulated. It's regulated the same way as a bed and breakfast, and they're all lumped together. And the other
that seems relatively onerous if it's going to be the same as a bed and breakfast.
Well, then they may have to get licensed by the health department, right? So I agree. The other piece of that is it requires conditional use review and approval, which means it's got to go through a formal land use review process with a 2-week public notice period and a 12-day appeal period. So there's no fast track to something like that. So that's why. So I don't look at the papers.
All right.
How many applications like that have you processed in the last year?
Well, on occasion we do a few. I mean, and typically it's somebody, if they're, honest with us and upfront and they want to do the right thing and do it the right way, because as you know, there's also liability issues if you do not, right? So, property owners and homeowners that voluntarily just rent without getting those permits and stuff in place and the inspections, I mean, that puts them at a level of liability too. So, it is definitely worth it. I think there's a lot of space there for improvement, Tom, and that's something that I'm working with the Development Code Subcommittee on.
So I will post whatever I find out back to the commission members or through Sarah about how Home Share Oregon does that in different jurisdictions. I think that would be interesting. Gail?
Oh, go ahead, Gail.
You're muted. That's my first time to say that.
Michelle, why don't you go ahead, because I have more unrelated questions. Now Michelle is muted.
Now I'm muted. Okay. I was an exchange student twice. Granted, I did pay for that experience, but the people basically put me up for free for whatever time frame it was that I was involved in it. And I feel like maybe there are some altruistic minded people that would be willing to do something like that. Do all the same, I mean, obviously the same caveats apply, but legally, and can we try to have an informal housing host program or something?
So I'm not an attorney, but what I would say is, I say that, there's a difference between being a guest in someone's home and renting for lodging. And I think that that's probably where one of the biggest lines are, Michelle. And I think that Ed will be able to help a lot with the research that he's doing to kind of help us understand how other jurisdictions work on this. The other thing I would like to offer to the Housing Commission after the great conversations today is maybe it would be beneficial to put a panel together for an upcoming meeting and invite Public Works, have Jack Applegate, who is our interim building official, and maybe a couple of city folks come and just do a panel and a presentation on what development looks like. Like, why do we have to do what we do? Why are things done the way they're done? Todd's talking about, road improvement requirements and different things to maybe help the commission better understand as we move forward why things are done the way they're done, but then also where's the daylight of maybe where things could be taken a look at. And certainly we're all doing that, but would that be something that you guys would be interested in? I see a lot of heads. Okay.
I think it would be really a good one once we could meet in person too. That dynamic would be helpful.
Sure. Oh, and thank you, Ed. Yes, and hopefully September. That's what we're shooting for. I think we should probably do one more month. We got a lot of folks. I've gotten a couple of mixed reviews. I need to make sure I have all the equipment that I need to do kind of a hybrid meeting for virtual and in person. So Allison and I are going to work on that. And so that's our target, is maybe to go back to in person in September at the port. But then, of course, having an opportunity for those who want to participate virtually as well.
And Sarah, one other last thing, and then I'll turn it over to Gail. Today is the first day of the rest of our lives, as people always say. This is the first day of the tax on short-term rentals. Or not short-term rentals.
The operator license fee.
Right.
Correct.
You want to just mention that real quickly for the group?
Sure, I would be happy to. So one of the three strategies that came out of the 2019 Housing Summit was a fee generation mechanism that would generate revenue to help fund county housing and public safety initiatives. This fund is split. It is a 75-25 split. 75% of the revenue generated from the short-term rental operator license fee, which was what the mechanism became, would go to fund housing initiatives. and that money would be awarded through the Housing Commission and Board of County Commissioners. So the Housing Commission would make recommendations to the board of what projects through a grant process would be awarded the funds. And then the remaining 25% will go to public safety. So fire districts, sheriff's office, especially if we have an active property tax exemption within unincorporated Tillamook County, which includes the urban growth areas, but just not those properties within city limits, unless they choose to also adopt an exemption program as well. But the money to the fire districts would help offset the tax revenue that they feel that they would lose with an active exemption for the life of an exemption. So it's a way to help supplement them to make sure that they have the financial resources that they would normally get through a development on the tax rolls that they would be missing out on through that exemption period. And so today is the day that the short-term rental operator license fee goes into effect. It was passed unanimously by the Board of County Commissioners at the end of 2020. So my staff and I, so that's one of the divisions of community development that I manage, is the short-term rental program. So my staff and I have been working for the last 6 months to help get the administrative and collection component of the short-term rental operator license fee established, and have had several meetings with vacation rental management companies and owners. And so they've all had quite 6 months to prepare for this new program. And today the program kicks off. And so we're starting with the third quarter. And so the operator license fee is a quarterly fee, and it is based on gross revenue of rental activities for the quarter. It was the vacation rental management company managers who felt that a quarterly fee was manageable for them, especially as seasons change. So the winter months aren't as busy as the summer. And then with that, we have a lot of mom and pop rentals versus some of our higher end home rentals that charge significantly more. And so the operator license fee based on the gross revenue is equitable, they felt, to everyone. So you pay for your portion based on what your revenue was. And so we have that program started. Starting with the third quarter, it will end at the end of September, and then they have 30 days to make their operator license fee payments. So we will be ready to receive those payments by the end of October.
Sarah, what is the percent that they pay?
It's roughly less than 1%, or about 1%, Kristen. It is not a tax. Just to be clear, it is not a tax. I will say that again, it is not a tax. But we had to come up with a fee scale so that it's something that short-term rental owners could determine what their quarterly operator license fee would be. And so if you go to the short-term rental page of community development, it does have Ordinance 86, which is the short-term rental operator license fee ordinance. And then that fee scale is there as well.
You have to get me trained in the correct descriptions. Apologies.
It's okay.
I screw up the tax exemption one too, but I'm working on it.
It's everybody does it, and I mean, there's a lot of people that feel that it is a tax, and we are working through all of that as well. I do expect to have updates about this program as it takes off and runs and sees what happens. So I'll keep you all posted. But we're just at the start and we're just at the beginning. So we'll see where it goes.
Great, Gail.
Well, my big question was, when do we get to meet live in person? So you said that. And I'm hoping that when we start meeting live and in person, we'll also start having minutes again.
Yes, we will. So we've been recording the meetings. It has been great to have Allison join our team. We do not have any administrative staff in community development. I don't know if you guys know that, but there is no admin staff. Everybody is specialized to a certain permit or regulatory review function. And so having Allison here has been a wonderful game changer for all of us. And we hope she stays with us for a really, really, really long time, because now we're all starting to feel spoiled. But one thing that Allison will start doing is helping with those minutes. And then, of course, when we finally have a housing coordinator that we can hire that can also find a place to live here and stay, then that will be one of the duties that they will resume.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're to the point of public comment of any of the people that have been following the meeting that had something they wanted to say. Give them opportunity now. I've seen a few of the chats at the bottom, so I know some ideas that people have shared, and that's great. Michelle?
It's not public comment, but it's an update that I wanted to make sure that people were aware of. Thanks to all of the support, letters of support and engagement, the Golden Eagle 2 funding application was approved and is moving forward. The email I was looped into, and I know Sarah was too, that the 9% federal low income housing tax credit, NOFA, overwhelming response, and pleased to inform them that their application for that funding of $973,000 for the Golden Eagle 2 project is being recommended for funding and presented at the Housing Stability Council on July 2nd. So that's some pretty fantastic news for those of you that were on that call with the folks from the agency down in Lincoln City that's been working on that. We were going to risk losing that subsidized housing in Tillamook proper, and it sounds like it maybe is secure now.
So then we're gonna, because we had talked about conversations there of supporting them financially through some of the funding that's coming in, so we would need to follow up on that, right?
Good question. I don't know if they're going to need additional funding, if that was adequate for what their need was or not. I know they were also looking at expanding the number of units on that property, I believe. So in addition to preserving it, there was a plan to expand it, but I don't know as much as probably Sarah does.
Thank you, Michelle. That's, you know what I know. Appreciate it.
Okay, other comments, or any of the people have been following the meeting? Boy, we're getting a good following. I'm pleased. Maybe we'll continue to do the Zoom so more people can follow and that don't want to drive all the way to out to the port. Okay. Well, we're 4 minutes early to ending the meeting, and thank you everybody for participating. And our subcommittees are meeting again. We're going to keep rolling along. So I'll see you all later.